Hey guys, currently reporting from my local gym, which is really nice actually. I mean, how do people build stuff like this? Architects are just amazing. But anyway, I digress. We are here to talk about last week's session at Hustler that I played. Now, I know I mentioned last vlog that I would go to Vegas and make some tournament vlogs, and I did go to Vegas, but the tournaments did not go as planned. In fact, it went so poorly that I couldn't even get a proper vlog out. In the first tournament, I busted in like the first hour, pocket kings versus pocket sevens, all in pre-flop, and he hit a 7. And then in the second tournament, my heart wasn't really in it, to be honest. I was like on my phone, kind of dwiddling away my stack until eventually I lost some all in, which, you know, I probably misplayed in tournament land. So I'm sorry for all you guys who wanted a tournament video, but it just didn't happen this time around. I think my heart's just not really in those things. If you guys want those videos, you got Rampage, Brado, and I don't know who else is making poker vlogs these days, but I think I'm going to stick to cash games for now. So that said, before we get into last week's session, which was a high stakes session, I wanted to remind you all that my band, Dear Delta, in case you haven't heard, I'm in a rock band now. It's like a passion project that we're trying. My band finally booked a real show. We're playing at the Viper Room next month, January 18th. Would love it if you guys came out to that. We've already sold almost all tickets available, but there are a few left, and it's just going to be a great time. There's also going to be a few players you might recognize, like Rampage, Close to Broke, Brown Balla, and a few other notable figures in the poker world are coming out to support. So if you guys want to come have a drink, enjoy some live music, and just hang out, I would love to meet you all there. Tickets are only $10, which I feel like is a fair price for what I think will be a very fun night. So if you guys are interested, link is down in the description. Anyway, that's enough gibberish. Let's get straight into some poker hands. Alright guys, here we go once again. Today the game is 25.50, but as you all know by now, there's often straddles to 100 and 200. I sit down with $50,000, and it takes about an hour and a half before we jump into our first interesting hand. I've been mostly card dead and pretty quiet so far. In this one there's a double straddle on, so the blinds are 25.50, 1, 2, and then Benji raises in the cutoff to $500. I'm next to act on the button. I've got pocket fives. Pretty nice hand to play post flop with, and since we are on the button, I'm happy to call, so that's what I do. Now it gets to the recycler in the straddle who decides to raise. Now something I should have mentioned is the stand-up game was on, and the recycler was one of 2 remaining players who needs to win a hand, so he might be incentivized to raise a little bit lighter than normal. Still, I think he's probably got a decent hand at least. Makes it 2,500 to go. Action's back to Benji now, and he shoves all in for his $10,000, maybe a little more than that. Back to me now, and I kind of have a feeling that both of these guys have ace high. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I've played a fair amount with Recycler, and Benji, well, I don't know why, I was just getting a vibe that he would play ace king or ace queen this way, whereas strong over pairs might take a different sizing or perhaps even flat once in a while to bring me in. So with pocket fives, assuming both of these guys have 2 Broadway cards, I decided to get in there and gamble. Now, of course, it's worth mentioning that I could be wrong. I'm just giving you guys my real-time reads. However, we are right this time as both players have ace high. We're up against ace queen of hearts and ace king of diamonds. As you guys can see, we have 43% equity, which is obviously not amazing, but when you consider that it's a 3-way all-in, it's pretty damn good. Unfortunately, there's a queen on the first board, so we're going to lose that one to Recycler. However, on the second board, no high cards come out, and we even make a full house on the river. So a pretty good result, all things considered. We end up chopping the pot, but since it was a 3-way all-in, I end up profiting around $7,000 or $8,000 in this hand. So already kind of a strange one to start off the night, and we're going to keep it going with that theme. This hand is just as odd, if not more weird. There's a raise to $300 from Efan. You guys might recognize him from the Lodge. He's now playing here in California. He makes it 300. I look down at ace-5 offsuit in the straddle. Everyone else folds, but of course I am going to defend the straddle with a hand like this. So heads up to a flop of queen 5-3 rainbow. I check. He bets $300 once again, and of course with middle pair, I make the call. Turn card is great. It's the 5 of diamonds, giving me 3 of a kind. And not just that, but it's generally a card that's going to favor me more often than him. I would lead with a lot of bluffs here, so I'm going to do it the times that I actually have 3 of a kind as well. I put in a bet of $400, trying to go around a third pot. Efan makes the call, which I'm happy to see, and we go to the king of diamonds on the river. Now, of course, not the best card in the world, since the backdoor flush gets there. And of course we are losing to some hands, but that aside, we should still have the best hand. So I'm going to continue betting. Like I said, I could have some bluffs here, say hands like 6-4 suited, maybe 4 deuce suited once in a while, 6-7 suited, all sorts of stuff that might want to take a stab as played. So I'm going to continue to try to tell the story that I'm bluffing or I've got a value hand. I put in $1,600, and after much thought, Efan decides not to fold, not to call either. Instead, he goes for a raise to $6,200. Now we're in a really tricky spot, because even though I have a great hand, what bluffs could Efan possibly have? Now, of course, it's easier when you guys can see the cards. He's just got pocket sevens and is deciding to raise, which, to be honest, I'm not really sure if that's a bluff or if he's just kind of thinking he's got the best hand and I might call him with ace high. I'm not going to pretend to understand. Efan's got his own style, and it's above my pay grade, but all I know is I've got 3 of a kind and I can't really fold this hand. That said, we could easily be up against a flush, we could be up against pocket kings, we could be up against pocket queens, pocket 3s, king 5, queen 5 suited maybe, although that seems super unlikely, but you guys get the idea. There's so many hands that beat me that now want to raise for value. Are there enough bluffs? I mean, maybe he's got 6-7 suited himself. Maybe he has 6-4 suited. I don't really know. But after some thought, I decide I just can't come up with many bluffs and decide to make the hero fold, similar to last week when I folded trips against a player named Tough. That time it was correct. This time it is not. As you guys can see, I go for the hero fold and it is wrong. Looking back, I think a call is probably best, because despite not being able to assign Efan many bluffs, this is just pretty much the strongest hand I would ever have in this situation, aside from the occasional flush, but that seems unlikely. More often than not, this is one of the best hands I could ever arrive at this spot with, so probably should just call and deal with the consequences. Unfortunately, this time I try to knit it up and save some money, but I look like an idiot in the process. About an hour later, this hand goes down where I look down at 7 deuce suited in the cutoff and decide to make it 300 to go. Now you might be wondering, are you guys playing the 7 deuce game? And I'm going to be honest, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure the answer is no. Probably just playing this one for the memes. Here we go. Recycler calls in the big blind and Sandor calls in the straddle. So 3 of us go to a flop of ace 5-4 with 1 heart. Not too bad, all things considered. We've got a straight draw and can represent a fair amount of hands after the way pre-flop played out. So when Recycler and Sandor check to me, I decide to continue telling the story. I make it $600. Recycler gets out of there, but Sandor makes the call with his 2 pair. Turn card doesn't look too bad to me. It's the deuce of clubs. If he's got any single pair holding, it's going to be really tough to hang on. And if he had a flush draw, I feel like he might check raise the flop at least once in a while. So really only worried about a flush here. Aside from that, I feel like we could get away with murder. When he checks, I continue betting, this time $1,000. Once again, Sandor makes the call, so we're looking for some improvement on the river, or at least a card that I could bluff at. And that's what we get. It's the 8 of clubs. Not sure how to feel about this one. You guys know how it is when there's 4 of a suit out there. It's kind of a game of chicken, right? If you don't have it, does the other guy have it? Do you want to pretend you have it? Is he going to try to raise you with nothing? You never really know, but you only find out if you try, right? So when Sandor checks it to me a third time, I feel like, yeah, he could have some single pair holdings that contain a club that call on the turn and now improve to a flush. Those hands are obviously not going anywhere now, but if he's got any hand that doesn't contain a club, I feel like it's just going to be an impossible situation for him. So I put in around a half pot bet, $2,200. Would do this with pretty much any flush, I think, on this board texture. Sandor does not love it, as you guys can see, but it looks like he's in the hero calling mood because despite losing to a plethora of hands, he decides to keep me honest and make the call. Nice call from Sandor. At least this time it was. Damn it, man, you got me. He wins this pot, 8,500 headed his way, and it's just another lesson in the book of why you should not play 7 deuce. This time it does not work out. All right, enough messing around. No more playing bad hands. In this one, I've got ace queen. All right, even all the experts in the comments can approve of ace queen, especially the suited variety. In this one, the Recycler makes it $400 on the button. I am in the straddle, and of course, I'm going to raise it up. Recycler does not care. He comes along, and we go heads up to a flop of queen 9-3 with 1 spade. A beautiful flop after re-raising pre with ace queen. I continue betting for a small size. Would do this with all my hands. Make it $1,000. Recycler calls with his pocket 2s, and we go to a turn which is the 5 of hearts. Now Recycler's got around double the pot-sized bet remaining, perhaps a little bit more, but in the moment I couldn't fully see his stack, so I think an all-in here isn't the worst play ever. We could get max value versus any other queen, and of course if we had a bluff, we would want to apply max pressure here too. Could also see like a, $4,000 bet and then an all-in on the river. In fact, I think I actually like that a bit more. But maybe I'm not 100% on my game today, or maybe I'm being results oriented. Regardless, either way, I end up going all in, and Recycler, of course, makes the fold with his pocket 2s. In my defense, I didn't think he had such a weak hand. I thought we were up against either like a hand like ace 9, king 9, or of course a weaker queen. Not the case this time, and perhaps there was no value regardless what size I chose. In the following hand, I look down at 6-5 offsuit. Stand-up game is on. I decide to raise it up to 300 in late position. This hand is just too weak to do this with, but here we are. I just figured I'd say that in case anyone out there is watching this video to try to learn some theoretical, basic, solid poker. Sometimes I think, showcase that, but in this exact hand, not the case. Anyway, Efan calls on my left with 10-8 offsuit, and Recycler and Sandor also call with just bad hands. We all suck at this game, at least during this particular moment. Anyway, we go to a flop of queen 6-4, which checks all the way around. Of course, I've got middle pair, could bet it here, but decide to just keep it chill and check it. Efan checks it back, and we go to a turn which, once again, gives me trips today. It's the 6 of hearts. Only difference is it does not introduce a flush draw like it did last time I had trips, but either way, we're 4 ways. I've got 3 of a kind. This is a good situation. Unfortunately, 2 players check, and when it gets to me, I should probably just bet, right? Yes, but I decide to get extra cute and check it again, expecting someone to bluff the river. Mainly I'm doing this because I don't think anyone has that strong of a hand after the flop checks around and then the turn starts to check around. I feel like there's just more value in letting one of these guys stab. What do you know? That's exactly what happens as Efan finally gets tired of all the weakness and puts in $800 on the button. Recycler and Sandor get out of the way, but of course, I am laying in the weeds with a strong hand. I can't go anywhere just yet. However, like I said, I feel like everyone is weak and this just smells like a bluff, so I decide to only call and go to a river, which improves us to a full house. It's the 4 of clubs. Not that I really think this changes anything. I still suspect we're up against a bluff. So of course, I'm going to check it over to Efan and let him take a stab. Sure enough, that's what happens as he puts in $1,700. Sorry, Efan, but most likely you are not getting this money back. Now it's time to check raise, of course. Not expecting to get called too often, but still, we have to try. Maybe I was wrong and he checked a queen on the flop or something. Nope, that's not the case. Efan pretends to think about it for a little while and then folds. Not the biggest hand ever, but it looks like we got the max, or close to it at least. In this next hand, action folds all the way around to Dr. P in the big blind. There's a double straddle on from yours truly, so again, blinds are 25, 50, 100, 200. He's in the 50 and decides to limp in for 200. Now Benji raises to 1,000 in the straddle, and I am on his left with 9-7 offsuit. Not the best hand ever, but I decide to call mainly because I have position against both of these guys. And I'm not gonna lie, I like my chances. So I make the call, Dr. P calls as well, and this is the usual Hustler Casino Live kind of stuff. We're taking trash to the streets, seeing who runs hotter, who plays better, who's got position. Flop comes down 6-5-4, 2 clubs. Not too shabby for the old 9-7 offsuit. Not just because I've got a straight draw, of course, but mainly because this is a flop that's gonna hit me all the time as I flat pre-flop from the final blind. Could have sets, 2 pairs, straights, flush draws, combo draws, you name it. I'm all over this board. However, Dr. P actually has a piece too, of course. He's got a flush draw, 2 overs, and a straight draw himself, so he's not pretending, he's actually got it, but he decides to check it. Benji also checks, and now, because like I said, I feel like this is a good board for me, I decide to put in a bet. I make it 1,500. Dr. P just calls with his combo draw, and now Benji calls as well. Not exactly what I expected, so when the turn comes to Jack of Spades and they check to me again, I decide to pump the brakes a little bit. After getting called in 2 spots on the flop, this seems like a dangerous situation, and I don't want to get check raised, so I decide to take the free card, which is a 7. Kind of a weird card because, yeah, we make a pair, but it's probably not the best hand. At the same time, maybe we can bluff because I feel like it's hard for either of these guys to have an 8 as played. Could be wrong, and well, I guess I am. As you guys can see, Dr. P actually does have an 8. I figured the only way either of these guys could have an 8 is if it was pocket 8s or some sort of flush draw that contained an 8. Not going to be the case too often, so when Dr. P bets 2,000 and Benji folds, I do contemplate raising here, but I don't know. It just seems too suicidal. Would he really be bluffing into 2 opponents on this river? Or would he really be betting a 3, right? The bottom end of a straight against 2 opponents? I don't think so. So I decide to just let this one go, wave the white flag, and luckily this was the right choice as Dr. P was probably not folding the second nuts. So as you guys can tell, I've been mostly card dead here today at Hustler, playing kind of mediocre to trashy hands. And it's been like 4 hours without me getting a real premium. Well, I guess ace queen of spades counts, but you guys get what I mean. It's been a slow day, but the last 2 hands I think are going to be approved by all audience members. In this one, I've got ace queen offsuit. Very appropriate, very demure. There's a raise to $300. Dr. P calls in the hijack, and I decide to raise it on the button. I make it $1,600 to go. Sandor, who's the original raiser, he lets it go, but Dr. P calls again. So he's out of position after calling twice pre-flop. I'm not super sure what kind of hands he might be doing this with. I guess pocket 10s fits the bill. Definitely want to see a flop with that hand. So we go heads up to a board of 9-8-5 rainbow. Not really the best board for me. He's often going to have sets, 2 pairs, and straights, whereas I wouldn't have those nearly as frequently. So when he checks, I decide to check this one back, and we see the Jack of Spades on the turn. Dr. P checks again, and now I think it's time to start bluffing. As played, I feel that it's very likely he's got a single pair holding like 8-7 suited, 10-9 suited, pocket 6s, pocket 7s. You guys get the idea. I feel like 2 pair or sets or really any strong hand would have let out on the turn since we both checked the flop. So I decided to spring into action and try to get folds from those single pair holdings. If I had a hand like King Jack suited, Ace Jack, even an overpair that checks back the flop, all those hands would start to go for value now. So I feel comfortable in betting this ace queen high as a bluff. Put in $3,200, a little bit of a bigger sizing. Dr. P makes the call, which like I said I expected, and we're off to a river which is not the best one. It's the 6 of spades. So now any 7 makes a straight, of course. Pocket 6s make a set. Just not an ideal card. But Dr. P checks again, and feeling a bit combative today, and I would go for some thin value with a few hands here. Mainly overpairs, ace jack, like I said on the turn. Just pretty much every hand that bets on the turn for value might continue betting here for some super thin value. Of course, we would fold to a raise with those hands, but yeah, you guys get the idea. I'm going to balance out those value bets with a few bluffs, and I feel like ace queen is not the worst candidate. In terms of sizing, I don't think I'd go too big here since this isn't the best card for me in the world. So I put in $5,000, just thinking to myself, how much would I bet with, say, top 2, for example? So $5,000 are going into the middle. Dr. P does not love it, as you guys can see, and I really don't blame him. This is just a disgusting spot with pocket 10s. You really don't want to fold, but it really feels like you're beat. I don't envy his situation at all. After about 2 or 3 minutes, however, Dr. P finally makes a decision, and that decision is to fold. Thank goodness we get this one through. Again, not the biggest pot of the night, but definitely feels good to win hands like these on slow nights. And with that, we arrive at the last fun one of the night. In this one, there's a race to $500 from Ryan. I am on the button with Ace King. A premium, definitely a premium, no matter how you look at it. I make it $1,700 to go. Back around to Ryan now, who makes the call, and we get a great flop of ace 6-3 rainbow. Top pair, top kicker on a pretty innocent looking board. Ryan checks, and I am going to continue betting. I put in $1,100. Ryan makes the call, and we see another 3 on the turn. That's a very nice card. Don't expect to be up against a 3 too often, but hands like pocket 3s and ace 3 suited become less likely. In fact, ace 3 suited is now impossible if you look at the suits of my ace and, you know, the ace out there and the 3s. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to continue betting because I have a super strong hand. Fingers crossed, of course, that we're up against a weaker ace. I put in a bet of $5,000 this time, trying to set up an all-in on the river. Unfortunately, Ryan just has pocket 4s. So he lets it go, and we win this one. Again, not a huge win, but this is just how poker goes sometimes, you know? There's days where you win massive coolers, you run hot, there's just big pots all over the place. And then there are days like these where you're not necessarily running bad, but part of the equation seems to be missing. And that part of the equation is having strong hands when other guys have strong hands, running into situations where you can get a lot of chips. You guys get the idea. And that just wasn't the case for me today, but I still think there were some interesting talking points. And of course, I've got some final thoughts before you guys sign off. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoyed the hands. So despite not having the most exciting of sessions at Hustler, I did manage to win, and it was a healthy win at that. $20,000 in the positive, nothing to complain about, of course. Just goes to show that even when you don't have the most action-packed days in a poker room, you can still put together a nice win. Now that's it for poker this week, guys, but I wanted to remind you all before you go about my band show coming up in around a month's time. Hopefully I see you guys at the Viper Room. Like I said, tickets are down below. It's only $10. Get yourself one, bring a friend, have some fun, and hopefully I meet a few of you guys there. All right, that's it for this time. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for the support, and I will see you all very soon. Good luck at your local tables. Until then, peace.